was the very end of my 5th grade year, and I was hanging out with my buddy Scott. Scott was like my best friend. We both lived on the same exact dirt road, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm chilling with Scott, and Scott and I decide we're going to go see our buddy Dusty. Dusty lived up across the highway. This is all important. And so we go to Dusty's house. We were hitting golf balls into the hay pasture. We were going to find the golf balls on this four-wheeler. And when we got done, it was about an hour before dark, and it was time for Scott and I to go home so we wouldn't get in trouble. So we take off walking. Here's the problem. Dusty's driveway didn't really come out on the highway near any of the entrances to our dirt road that we lived on. So we always had to walk along the highway a little bit every time we go visit Dusty. So Scott and I are cruising along the highway. We're walking along, and we come up on this really good size, like fist-size Oklahoma bullfrog, okay? When it was alive, here's the difference. It had been run over by exactly 1,037 semis and had been turned into this like 7-8-inch dried crispy frog frisbee, right? I mean, its guts were all spilled out, its brains all flattened. And so Scott and I see this thing, we're like, ooh, gross. Just kidding, we were like, and so I pick this thing up, and I'm looking at it, and I hand it to him, and he gives it to me, he's like, what are you gonna do? And in that moment, I had what I will call a stroke of junior high boy brilliance, okay, also known as moronic stupidity. And none of you dudes in the room can judge me because most of y'all still living in that zone, and that includes us youth ministers. And I said to Scott, I'm going to throw it at the next car that drives by. And so we took off walking. Okay, keep in mind, I did not know the Lord at this point. So we're walking along the highway. Scott's here. I got the Frisbee in my left hand. And a little while later, we hear a car coming. Right? And so I looked back one time, and I was like, okay, not a cop. Yeet. So we kept walking. That wasn't a word back then. But we kept walking, frog frisbee in hand, and I never looked back again. I never, to look back to time it. I just played it by ear, and as this pickup truck ended up being flew by, I just tossed this frog in the general direction of this pickup. And then a whole lot of crud hit the fan at once, right? They slam on the brakes. The truck's like shimmying down the highway, like their arms are waving out of the window. They kick it in reverse, and we see the white lights. And I look at Scott, I'm like, what'd you do? And then Scott and I did like the only thing that we humans know to do when things get really hard and really scary. Run and hide. Problem was, they were right in front of the entrance to the dirt road that we were going to, and the other one that's way back behind us, we never beat them to it, so we took off running through the woods. We had about 100 miles of just nasty, thorny, poison ivy, Oklahoma hardwood, so we just start hauling the mail up the embankment, and Scott played lots of sports, and he was really athletic. I played a lot of Sega Genesis, and I was really chubby, and so I'm just trying to catch up, right? And we're hauling the mail, and he gets to the dirt road first. He goes to his house. By the time I get to the dirt road, he's already like going in the door. He's like, I'll call you tomorrow. And so I'm hauling. I still have like an 1/8 of a mile to get to my house, and I'm just running. And as I get close to the yard, I realize, oh crud, my mom and dad, my aunts and uncles, mom and dad's friends were all hanging out at the house, sitting in the yard in lawn chairs because it was this big strawberry festival that day in my hometown. I knew it looked suspicious if the chubby kid came home at a full sprint. So I stopped, and I'm like, and I went up, and I said to my parents, I'm going to go take a shower. Now, here's the deal, okay? What junior high boy comes home 2 hours before bedtime on a Saturday when his family never goes to church and volunteers to take a shower, okay? Junior high boys think showers come in black cans that say Axe on it, all right? I've been here since yesterday. Some of you boys still believe that philosophy. For the love of sweet baby Jesus, take a shower, okay? So that was the first clue that they knew something was up. But my mom and dad were like, okay, bub. And so I went inside, and I grabbed my towel, and I grabbed my clothes, and I went in, and I took like the world record longest junior high boy shower known to man. Why? Poison ivy, a little bit. Was I cut with thorns? Yeah, a little bit. Spider webs, all of it? Yeah, a little bit. What was I really doing? I was hiding because I knew that the people in that truck were probably looking for the chubby little kid that threw the frog. So I took this super long shower. I get done, and I'm like, okay, listen, if I can just get to my bedroom and hide out there, maybe I'll get away with it. And I took off walking, and I get halfway across the bedroom. And keep in mind, my parents are right outside in the front yard, and I hear my dad go, boy, get out here. And as soon as he said it, my cheeks just flinched because they knew, like, you did it again, Tibbet. You did something stupid, and we're about to suffer. And so I'm walking out, and my cheeks and I are like mourning the fact that we're not going to sit normal or walk normal for like 6 months. And we get out there, and my dad's like, boy, did you throw a frog at a truck on the highway? And I was like, yes, sir, because if he finds out you're lying, like it's 10 times worse, okay? And for respect of my booty, I was like, yes, sir. And then I waited the verdict, right? And I remember in this conversation somewhere, like seeing my aunts and uncles, like it was like an SNL skit that was kind of busted up. They were trying not to laugh. And I was like, okay, yes, sir. boy, go to bed. Don't be doing stupid stuff like that anymore. And I walked away, and you know this moment when like you have to act like you're really sad, like, oh, remorseful, so sad. But on the inside, I was like, whoa, how do we get away with that one, right? Here's how we got away. Turns out this is like one of my aunt and uncle's like favorite stories to tell about stupid little me. And years later in college, they were telling this at Thanksgiving, and one of my aunts was like, remember that time you threw that frog at the truck? And I got to hear the parental side of things, okay? Turns out while I was hiding in the shower, the couple in that truck went house to house looking for the little blonde boys, especially the little chubby one that threw the frog at their truck, and the neighbors directed them to our house. So they get up and they're hot, like they're mad. And they get, and this lady's like, you got a little middle school boy listener? Oh, yeah. Where is he? Well, he's in the shower. And then she began to demand, you're going to drag him out here, and I want to watch you whoop Israel, and I ain't leaving until it gets done. This is Oklahoma, okay, so there's lots of ain'ts and y'alls. And you're going to whoop Israel, and I ain't leaving until it, and she's just demanding, right? And then she whips out the frog. Because he threw this frog through the window of our truck while we were going down the highway, and it hit me in the head. I swear. True story. I have phone numbers of aunts and uncles who can verify. Okay, I can't even throw a Frisbee as an adult, as a couple people learned today. I throw it, and like you people that do this stuff, I hate you, right? But here's how I know God has a sense of humor. I threw this frog with my left hand. I'm right-handed. Left hand. At a truck going down the highway, speed limit 65 miles an hour, and it made it through the window and hit this lady in the head, right? And the only things that saved me, okay, the only thing that saved me is, number one, Mama Bear. You don't tell my backwoods mama what to do with her kids, right? And so when this lady's like, my mom was like, you're going to get off our property before bad stuff's going to happen, right? And so this lady leaves angry and upset. The second thing that saved me is when she leaves, my aunts and uncles were all laughing so hard about what happened that my parents couldn't really be that upset with me. And the third thing that saved my booty that day is when that lady showed up and was demanding that I be whooped, my booty had run and hid in the shower, right? And here's the thing. We run and hide all the time. You run and hide all the time. We run and hide from things like text messages, right? Let's say you're doing a group project at school, and you're like me, and you do everything at the last minute, and then that girl that like is pulled together, she has to boss you around, and so she sends you that message the night before it's due. Hey, how's the poster board going for the group project tomorrow? We got to present, and you haven't even bought the poster board. You don't even know how to spell poster board. So what do? You ignore the text. That's running and hiding. Let's say you're doing bad in a class in school, right? And the school gives you this wonderful ability where you could log online and see, what assignments am I missing? What bonus work could I do? You got a teacher that you can go talk to and be like, hey, what could I do here to bring this grade? But do you do that? No. You pray and meditate the D's and F's away. That's called running and hiding. If you have to break up with your boyfriend and girlfriend, we don't do that face to face. That's weird as heck. You send a text message and then you avoid them for the rest of your life. That is running and hiding, right? But here's the problem. I wish this youth minister's heart wishes so much that the stuff that you faced in life, that its difficulty level was as simple as like scary group project people and grades and ex-girlfriends. Because here's what I know. Man, I'm a youth minister. And I've been praying for you guys since last night because I know as a youth minister that there are so many of you in this room who are carrying a whole lot more than luggage to CIY this week. And I know that a lot of you in this room have to face incredibly difficult, hard situations that are well beyond your years. And here's how I know, because, man, I work with kids just like you. In 2 weeks, I will take my own high school ministry to a CIY in Tennessee. And one of the kids going on there, her name's Addie. And there's probably an Addie out here right now. Addie's grandma had cancer, and we prayed for months and months that Addie's grandma would be healed, and she didn't, and she passed away. And then less than a month later, Addie's other grandma died unexpectedly, and she lost both grandmas that she was very close to in a 1-month time span, and you guys have to deal with stuff like that. You have to deal with stuff like Austin. Austin will be going with us to CIY in a couple weeks, and Austin has a stepdad who treats him like nothing he ever does is good enough. Nothing Austin ever does on the farm or when they go do side jobs together is ever good enough. He just gets berated and belittled, and his stepdad takes out anxiety and anger and frustration and stress out on Austin, and he just wears it to the point that he feels like his stepdad hates him. And you have to deal with that. Some of you have to deal with burying a classmate. I bet there's a group here right now that lost a kid this year. We did. His name was Brock. Everybody loved him. We called him Hollywood. He was the funniest kid in the world. He was so kind. and so respectful. And last November, I had to do his funeral because he was thrown through the windshield of a car because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Please wear your seatbelts. And the driver, his good friend who was driving, was distracted. And Brock died in the arms of people from our church at the scene. And I sat in our auditorium like this and preached his sermon and bawled my eyes out. And in that room were hundreds of kids just like you who are going like, why did this happen? Why? You have to face stuff like that. You have to face stuff like Grace and Judea. They're foster kids in our church. And you know how they became foster kids in our church? Because for the first 14, 15 years of their life, they were repeatedly sexually abused by someone that's supposed to stand up for them and protect them. And I could go on and on and on and on. And here's what I know. There are so many of you in here right now who are facing incredibly hard, difficult circumstances at home, or you're bringing those incredibly hard, difficult circumstances here with you. And here's the problem, is when you face incredibly hard, difficult circumstances, your natural inclination when things get hard and scary as a human is to run and hide. Here's the problem, though. We often run and hide the wrong direction down the tracks. We don't run this way. We run and hide this direction down the tracks, right? To some unhealthy feelings. And we face this difficulty and we began feeling hopeless and alone. And we began feeling those things you were talking about today, afraid. We began feeling shame and apathy and all hopelessness, all of these things. We began living and dwelling in these emotions and feelings. And the longer we live and dwell and run to these emotions, eventually they end up leading to unhealthy reactions and actions. And we make the situation worse by being rebellious and reckless and turning to things to try to fill that hole that can't ever fill that hole, right? When what you really need, students in this room, is when hard stuff comes your way, is to not run and hide to unhealthy feelings and unhealthy actions that direction down the tracks. You need to run and hide this direction down the tracks to the Father who is in control and who is with you. And everything I just said to you is not some flowery words of some chubby guy from Arkansas. Everything I just said to you is Elijah's jam tonight. This is his story, right? I mean, this is a hero in the faith you've been studying all week long, and he's been on mountaintop after mountaintop in his ministry and his career as a prophet. But tonight, he's going to get thrown in a difficult situation. And instead of running the right direction to the Father like he's done time and time again, he puts on that situation like lenses, and his vision is darkened, and he turns to some unhealthy emotions like loneliness and hopelessness and apathy and fear and anger and all of those things. And the longer he dwells those, he's turned his back on God's mission for him, and he's ready to throw in the towel and die, right? But why are we looking at this? Is it because, well, it's the next story in Elijah's story? No. Is it because it's like, well, we want to put another notch on our little CIY belts and be spiritual Susies, right? No. We are looking at this story because on the pages of 1 Kings 19 in Elijah's story is your story. Is the story of a broken, hurt generation, and there's wisdom here for you on how to face the Jezebels that come your way. So what was Elijah running from, right? What was he running from? Tyler talked about it this morning, video recaps. It's Jezebel, it's this crazy lady. Listen, there are crazy ladies out there everywhere. Some of y'all brought them as volunteers, I'm just saying. But there's crazy ladies everywhere. And he goes from this mountaintop on Mount Carmel, right? Like things are going so well, it's a big victory for the Lord. And like the next day, she's like threatening, hey, Elijah, what you did to my prophets, those boys of mine that you put to death, I'm going to do to you. I'm going to kill you. And when Elijah gets dealt this threat, this difficult situation, he doesn't turn to God. I mean, I want to be real clear. There's nothing wrong with running and hiding when you are running to and hiding in the person that is the Father. There's nothing wrong with that. He's done it time and time again, right? Remember back when the drought was going on, and he was a really unpopular dude because he's the one that kind of instituted it at God's hand, and people are looking for him. What did God do? God's like, go to the desert. You're going to go to this brook. I'm going to water you from this brook at Kerith, and I'm going to feed you by ravens in the morning and ravens at night. And he did it. And when that brook ran dry, what did God do? Hey, I need you to go to this widow's house. We're going to help her out. I'm going to help you. I'm going to keep her cupboards full. We're going to raise her son from the dead. It's going to be dope as heck, right? I'm going to take care of you. And then after that, he goes to the mountain, and he's outnumbered hundreds to one. And God shows up. In Elijah's career, he has run and hidden in the Father time and time again. And every time, God has proved to him, I got your back. I'm in control. I'm with you. But in this moment, for whatever reason, when Jezebel threatens him, he doesn't run that way. Is it because God's no longer big enough? No. Is it because maybe God has shown himself unfaithful? No. He puts the lenses of Jezebel on, and it's all he can see. And then he runs. And when I say runs, like homie was like the Forrest Gump of the Old Testament. Like he just kept running, right? Like he literally ran from the northern part of Israel. He ran over 100 miles to Beersheba, goes out in the desert, lays under a tree, wants to die. God sends an angel to feed him. He hops up. He runs another 250, 260 miles, we think, from Beersheba to Mount Horeb, which isn't even in the nation of Israel. I mean, he traveled 350 miles in a couple months' time. Like, dude, he's like the Usain Bolt, right, of the OT. He ran and he ran and he ran. But why did he run? Why did he run? Again, because he let the circumstance cloud his vision and he couldn't see that Father who's always had his back. And what did he run to? If he's not running to the Father, what did he run to? Well, he ran to, you're going to go, okay, yes. That's not what he ran to. He ran to unhealthy feelings. Man, God, I'm alone in this. There's nobody else. Man, God, things are never going to change. Let me read for you what he ran to. Here's his feelings and his emotions. And here's the thing. I want to be real clear. Like, you young'uns out here, this is my old man moment. Yo, young'uns, you guys out here literally are separated from Elijah by thousands of years, right? But I'm telling you right now, when he starts explaining his feelings, you're going to be up in his feels. You're going to get it, right? Because you resonate with this. Listen, here we go. 1 Kings 19, I'm going to start in verse 9. It says, that's Elijah, there he went into a cave and he spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he replied, I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, put your prophets to death with a sword, and I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. What is he saying, right? Here's what he's saying. These emotions that he's run to, I think, are threefold. I mean, yeah, he's afraid, right? He's afraid for his life. That's first. But the big emotions that he's expressing here is, God, number one, I think he's a little angry and bitter. God, I'm hacked off. You know why? Because I was your boy. I was your prophet. I was zealous for you. I was passionate for you. You told me jump. I said how high. I was your mouthpiece on this earth. I did everything right, and I still get dealt this raw hand. I'm angry because I don't feel like I deserve this, and I don't think it's fair. Here's the second thing he's feeling. He talked about them putting the prophets to death, God's people to death, tearing down his altars. I think he's saying, God, I'm seeing a pattern here. There's no hope. No hope to the point that I'm ready to I don't even care anymore. I'm apathetic. Stone the towel. There's no hope. You know why, God? Because you know what? They put your prophets to death. They tore down your altars. We had this great victory on Mount Carmel just a little while ago, and guess what? The next day, my life's being threatened because that wicked queen is still on the throne. God, it changed nothing. What happened on the mountain changed nothing. There is no hope. It's never going to get better. I'm hopeless. I'm done. I don't care. I'm apathetic. Here's the third thing he's feeling. He says it plain as day. I am alone. God, it's just me. There's nobody with me in this. It's just me, right? And you got to understand what's going on here. Are these things true? No, God's going to tear them down later. But this is the truth that he's put over his eyes. These are the lenses. Man, Jezebel's threatened my life. I can see nothing but this circumstance. I'm not seeing God, and I run the wrong direction down the track, and I'm hiding in these feelings, and I'm hiding in these emotions, and he's putting these emotions of hopelessness and loneliness over his eyes like lenses, and his vision is clouded. His memory is clouded, right? And it's in this moment. We love to talk about Mount Carmel. We love to talk about the ravens and the widow, and we love to talk about big positive moments. But here's the thing. It is in his darkest, despairing hour. He is at rock bottom where God shows up. And when God shows up, some pretty cool stuff happens. But before I read, I want to point out the first thing about God showing up. And I think we missed this. I've already read it. It didn't jump out at you. We missed this so much. Is that, God, chased him down. You know? Chased him down, sought him out. Homie ran 350 miles and God ran 351. It's but here's a problem. We don't see that. A lot of times, and I'm pointing this out because I really do feel there are students in this room who need to hear this. We feel like God's over here on his end of the tracks, right? The direction that Elijah should have run. And he's like, what in the name of me is Elijah doing? Holy Spirit, come here. Look at, yes, running the wrong way. Remember, he's the one on, Mount Carmel. Remember, you fed him with your ravens. That was awesome, by the way. But yes, we think that God is content to stay on his end of the tracks and watch Elijah run away. And he's just frustrated and angry and annoyed. And he's waiting on Elijah to figure it out and turn around and come to him, right? But that's not what happens. And I know that God is not limited by time and space, but figuratively, he chases him down and seeks him out. And you need to hear that, because I think a lot of you students in here, you face difficult circumstances and it's put you in such a dark place that you can't even see God, and you think he's just over here so disappointed with how you feel about him. You're angry at him because he let grandpa die anyway. You're angry at him because of this circumstance or that circumstance or this bad thing that came your way, and you're in such a dark place that you think he's just over here on his end of the tracks waiting for you to come out of the hole on yourself. And he's not. A lot of you think he's sitting over here looking for a reason to give up on you. Man, one more step the wrong way and I'm throwing in the towel. One more continuation of that habit they picked, it's to this dark place and I'm throwing in the towel. You know? One more handling a bad circumstance the wrong way and I'm done. I'm moving over here to Alicia, right? We're going to move on to the new guy. That's not what he did. Like, you've got to understand, if our God were looking for a reason to give up on you, then the cross would make zero sense. If our God's patience had a shelf life, then what Jesus did on the cross would make zero sense. And I'm here to tell you right now, like, God chased him down, sought him out. Elijah ran 350. God crawled it on his knees, bleeding with the cross on his back to get there, right? Why? Because he knows, what does Elijah need? Does he need a kick in the pants? Does he need a tongue lashing? Does he need to be yelled at? No. What Elijah needs is to see him in control and see him there. Remember, Elijah's vision is so clouded from this threat from Jezebel. His vision is so clouded by these unhealthy emotions that he's hiding in and dwelling in, and God knows he needs to see me. But before he gets to see God, some crunk stuff happens. Let's get to this, okay? 1 Kings 19, we're gonna continue in verse 11. Elijah's just expressed his feelings, his emotions. He's going to say them again. Verse 11 says, the Lord God said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. And then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And then after the earthquake came puppies. But I'm just making sure you're paying attention. Some of y'all being quiet. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came, that video gives me chills, a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face, and he went out and he stood at the mouth of the cave. And then a voice said to him, I think a lot of times we read this as, what are you doing here? We infuse our own guilt and shame into God's voice. And I think here it's probably more like a father. What are you doing here, Elijah? And he replied, same things as before. I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. Hey, I'm angry. I don't think I deserve this. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, put your prophets to death with a sword. You know, things are never going to get better, and I'm the only one left. And let me just stop there. And you guys ever feel those feelings? Do you face stuff in your life where you're like, stuff at home is never going to improve? At school, I don't deserve the way people treat me. It's just because I exist, they belittle me and make fun of me and outcast me and treat me like I'm second rate. I don't deserve that. You guys feel hopeless ever? You feel alone? Like the stuff you go through, no one's ever going to get and understand? I didn't even tell you about my girl Hallie earlier. I don't have time. You feel alone? He repeats it again, and then listen to what God says. This is where God starts taking the lenses off his eyes. Hey, Elijah, you're not right here. Let me take those off so you can see the truth and see me. It says, the Lord said to him, go back the way you came and go to the desert in Damascus. And when you get there, anoint Hazael. I'm going to butcher these names because I'm just a youth minister, okay? I'm not a Bible college scholar. Go to the desert of Damascus, and when you get there, anoint Hazael, king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of that guy, from Abel Meholah to succeed you as prophet. Verse 18, yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel whose knees have not bowed down to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him. What the heck is going on with the fire and the earthquakes, okay? You read that and you're like, weird flex, but okay, Lord, whatever. But here's, you've got to get this. It is a flex. It's a flex. Put yourself in Elijah's mindset, okay? The people in his day and age, they believed whether it was the one true God or many gods, they believed that God or the gods controlled the natural elements of fire and earthquakes and thunder and lightning and rain. They believed that. But at a deeper level, they believed that God or the gods, whatever they believed, literally tried to steer and direct and dictate what happened on earth through the natural elements. They tried to steer and dictate wars and battles and kings and kingdoms and thrones. I mean, think about this. In Elijah's own narrative, before this occurrence, God tried to call his people back to him who had wandered so far by denying them rain. How many times in the Old Testament, New Testament, do you read like a big event being influenced or a war or a battle being influenced by a natural element like water being parted, like a pillar of cloud leading them by day and a pillar of fire at night? Listen, why is God flexing? Because he shows up and he's like, you know what you need to see, Elijah? You need to remember, I got this. I am the all-powerful God and I am in control. And so God flexes outside the cave and then he whispers. But here's the thing. I think it's so important, and this is the most epic part of this whole narrative, that God didn't speak in the fire, that God didn't speak in the earthquake, that God didn't speak in the wind that shattered rocks, because I believe like we'd read it with our fallen hearts, and Elijah probably would have interpreted it as that angry God sitting over here on his end of the tracks, right? You've gone the wrong way. What are you doing? That's how my mom would yell at me as a kid. Like if he had spoken through the fire and the earthquake and the wind, it would have been interpreted this angry, frustrated God who's ready to throw in the towel, but that's not what he did. He flexed to remind him, I am in control. And then he waited for a calm moment to speak to him in a whisper. What are you doing here, Elijah? And when I hear that verse, I really hear it as a father. I hear it as that father who's crawled 351 miles on his knees to chase his kid down, and he is kneeling outside this cave of his own despair, his own hopelessness, loneliness that he's hiding in. God is kneeling outside of that, and he's like, child, why are you here? Why are you here? And Elijah's like, oh, I'm really alone, and there's no hope, and I'm a little bitter against you. And then God just starts very delicately wiping the knees of his kid off. Hey, Elijah, let's remove those lenses of hopelessness. Do you know why? Because things can get better. We have kings to anoint. You got a wingman named Elisha that you're going to appoint. Like, things can improve, Elijah, and you need to take that lens of hopelessness that Jezebel's put on your eyes and see that, right? And Elijah, you're not alone. You need to take that lens of loneliness off, because you know what? There's 7,000 in Israel who've never bowed down to Baal. And on top of that, you got your wingman coming. But even more importantly, God needed him to see, I am here. In Elijah's darkest, ugliest, nastiest hour, when he was ready to throw in the towel, despite all that God had done, God didn't give up on him. He chased him down. He sought him out. He reminded him, I am in control. And then he whispered his name, called him back to truth so that he could see him. And here's the thing, there are a whole lot of you in here, sitting in these chairs, a whole lot of Elijahs who need to hear that, who need to know that that difficult situation that you've brought here with you, that you're carrying on your shoulder, that difficult situation you're going to have to deal with and face when you get home, you need to hear, like, God is not blind to that. It's not beyond his control. He hasn't given up on you. It doesn't matter how far you've run. But I want to be really clear about two things. Number one, like old people like me, they look at your generation and they read statistics about increasing anxiety and depression amongst teenagers today, and they go, they're just weak. These kids are weak. They've got it so good. When I was a kid, I had to climb uphill both ways, buck naked, 12 kids on my back just to check the mail. Like, they say stuff like that. And they look at your generation and go, why are these kids depressed? Why are they struggling from anxiety, right? And they look at you and think that you're weak. I'm not that guy. And I hope that none of these adults sitting in this room are that individual, because here's what I know. You guys have to deal with difficult stuff. And I'll be real clear, let me step on some toes. Most of the time, those difficulties that are thrown your way are thrown your way by the old people who are calling you weak because of their dysfunction that they're passing on. So you do deal with difficult things, hard things, nasty things. But here's the second thing I want to beat into your brain tonight. You are dealing with them from a place of brokenness. I believe as a youth minister that the generation represented in this room right now, your generation, is a generation that is more broken and shaky in their foundation than any generation ever before you. For two reasons. Because you struggle with your identity, and you don't feel like you belong and fit anywhere. And let me just hit those real quick. Your identity. I mean, Jezebel comes your way and you're already broken and shaky and limping in your identity and belonging. And why identity? Because where in the world are you supposed to figure out who you are, right? What arena, what place is supposed to be the place where you firmly plant your feet in the ground and get poured into and built up and loved on and turned into, and where is the place that you're supposed to first see glimpses of the Father? It's in your home. And no generation in the history of our culture has had a more messed up home life than a lot of you sitting in this room. You are dealing with divorce. It's not even worth mentioning the rate that it's at. Divorce used to be like, oh, divorce. And now, it's the normal. And I know God can redeem blended families and single family stuff, but don't tell me for 2 seconds that when mom and dad split, that nuclear family that God intended you to have, that when they split, that doesn't just kind of kilter you off a little bit. It sets you back a hair. But you're dealing with dysfunction in the home. You guys are dealing with parents who are drug addicted and substance abuse addicted, like a lot of members of my family, my extended family. And I got 2 uncles that died of drug overdoses because of stuff like this. Jezebel's threatening them and running and fleeing to a hotel room because their marriage is falling apart and getting so drunk and doing so many drugs they asphyxiated on vomit in their sleep. You guys have to deal with that stuff. Dysfunction. You have to deal with the dysfunction of verbal abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. The last statistic I read for a class I was prepping for, 1 out of every 4 females in this room, 1 out of every 6 males in this room will either be sexually abused or sexually exposed before you reach the age of 18. That is heartbreaking. And you have to deal with that at home. And if you're not dealing with extreme stuff like abuse and drug and substance abuse, you guys, more often than not, my wife sees it in her 2nd grade class, I see it in my youth group, you're dealing with parents that are just disengaged and distracted. That as long as you will leave them alone, because they're so caught up in their own hobbies, their own interests, their own passions, their own television shows, they're tired from dealing with their own circumstances and their own problems, and as long as you will stay out of the way, they're happy, and they're content to let this generation be parented and raised by Netflix and a video game console. And I'm so tired of hearing my kids come to youth group and go, man, what'd you do this weekend? I watched like 12 episodes of whatever show. I'm like, your parents let you do that? Do they not care about, your mental health and physical health? They don't want to spend time with you, pour into you? You're dealing with parents that are just disengaged and distracted with their own stuff, the dysfunction. And so at home, this place that's meant to build you up and strengthen you and pour into you, you guys are more broken and shaky than any generation ever before you. And then you try to belong somewhere. That's that other thing, right? Every one of us has been made in God's image, right? And He created us because He wanted community with us, and we long for community, a place to belong with people like us around our own age, right? And you guys deal with the same stuff I did. You go out into the community at school and on your ball teams and in the hallways and in the community, and you deal with a bunch of broken people taking out their insecurities on you. You're not good enough, you're not athletic enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough. They beat you down. But here's the thing, even though it's the same stuff I dealt with when I was a kid, you can't escape it. I could. Back in my day, I would go to school and deal with that crud. But then I would unplug and I would go home. And even though my family had a lot of issues, man, I had 2 parents that loved me and was stable. And I get poured into. Most of you don't have that. A lot of you don't have that. But I could unplug from that bullying social scene, right? You guys can't. Because you carry around in your pockets $800 pocket computers known as smartphones that I like to call nightmare rectangles. And you bring it home. And you got made to feel like you didn't fit, and you got left out, and you got outcasted at school, and you come home and you see, wow, I thought those girls were my friends, but they just had a sleepover and didn't invite me. Wow, man, I thought those dudes were my homies, man, but they just went fishing or went and hung out and watched a movie, and I didn't get that invite. This guy got to play on a travel ball team, and man, I don't get to play on a travel ball team, and this girl gets to go on vacations, and we don't have any money, and so we don't get to go. And look at her bikini picture. That's probably why all the boys are so interested in her, because my body doesn't look like that, and it's never going to stack up, and that's why the boys aren't interested in me. And I thought that boy in my math class was interested in me, and we've been texting, but now I'm seeing on Snapchat that he posted a picture that he's on a date with another girl, and on and on. And all the Instagram models you follow make you feel like your body will never stack up. You are more aware than any generation that's ever existed in our culture, and I think in our world, of all the ways that you're being left out and that you don't fit and you don't belong. And so before Jezebel ever shows up, you are broken at home in your identity and shaken. You are broken in your sense of belonging. And when Jezebel shows up, you get dealt a hard situation, you're already on crutches. You're already limping. And so life throws a death in the family at you that you prayed against. Life throws you being bullied and outcast and ridiculed. Life throws you feeling like your body's never going to be good enough for the boys. Life throws you academic failure or athletic failure. It throws you some hard situation your way, and you're already broken and limping. And I'm not surprised that this generation represented in this room is more depressed and committing suicide at alarming rates. The CDC, Center for Disease Control, in our country, did a study from 2010 to 2015 on your generation. And they found, in a 5-year time period, a 58% increase in depression, diagnosed depression rates amongst teenagers. In that same time period, they found, and this is just, it hurts my heart, a 31% increase in suicides amongst teenagers in a 5-year period. And they also found amongst females, you creatures that do everything through belonging and community, you can't even go pee by yourself. They found in females in that same time period a 65% increase in suicides amongst teenagers. That is heartbreaking. Adults, do yourself a favor and go home and do a research about all the studies being done in the UK and the United States and the correlation between this generation being exposed to social media and how they feel about their lives. But here's the thing, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that this generation is ready to throw in the towel and they're so caught up in this cave of hopelessness and loneliness and despair. I'm not surprised. Why? Because you're already broken and hurting at home in your identity and in your sense of belonging before the Jezebels of the world ever came your way. And so when she shows up, you are so just overwhelmed and so consumed, you put her lenses over your eyes and you run and hide into those feelings of unhealthy feelings of loneliness and apathy and anger and fear and shame and all of it. And the longer you dwell there, it just complicates things because you make bad decisions out of rebelliousness in reaction to that. But I'm here to tell you, this is why I'm here, to tell you that in your darkest moment, if you're a student in this room and you feel like there's no hope and no one will ever understand what you're going through, and you're so afraid and you have so much shame from the ways that you've reacted in your dark cave, I am here to tell you the God of the universe, who is in control, has chased you down and sought you out the wrong direction down the tracks. And he is kneeling on his bleeding knees outside of the cave of your despair, and he is not raging, not yelling. He is whispering your name. Madison. Taylor. Autumn. You may feel like you're alone, but let me take those you've got tons of youth group kids and volunteers and youth ministers who love you and care for you. You're not alone. And on top of that, I'm here. He's kneeling outside of your cave, Matthew and Michael and Malachi and anyone else named with an M, and he's saying to you, man, you may thought I turned my back on you, but I didn't. I chased you down and sought you out, and it may not look like it, but I am in control. And I'm with you, and I got this. If you are in this room tonight and you are hurting because of a situation, you need to know that the God of the universe is whispering to you, child, why are you here? I am in control, and I am with you. Here's the question. Will you come out of the cave of your despair and let him dismantle the untruths that you've bought into? And will you see him? God, I come to you now, and I really pray that not my words will be heard, but God, that just what the Holy Spirit is saying to the hearts of so many students in this room. There's so many kids in here that brought so much more here than just clothes and shoes. There's so many kids in here that are dealing with just some incredibly hard stuff. And even right now as these lights dim, I know some of them are probably fighting back tears. And they're fighting back your Holy Spirit's urging. Some of them are probably angry and bitter at you for letting stuff happen that they feel they didn't deserve. Some of them may be bitter and angry at someone in this room who's brought about hurt and pain in their life. God, I pray for every heart in this room tonight that they will hear your whisper as you call them to come out of that cave that they've run and hid in. And you call them to see that you're in control when you're there. It's in Christ's name, amen.